Welcome to the Overanalyzers, a weekly podcast where we talk about how to learn, improve, and achieve our ambitious goals. I'm Dan, I'm building an art empire, and Mike is fixing software. Today is May 10th, 2026. Happy Mother's Day. Last week, we talked about Mike's 2-week reset. He was having a bunch of trouble, he was struggling mentally. I told him to take 2 weeks off. He took 2 weeks off. He should be at the end of his reset, peaceful vacation time, getting right back into the grind, right?
Yep.
And then, so that was one thing we talked about last week. We also had a meditation challenge, and we just wrapped that up, where we were supposed to meditate for 10 minutes every day for the last 2 weeks, and then one more challenge, which was quite interesting. It was a listener submitted challenge by VSTHERO called the Monofocus challenge. And we have been doing that. It is where you focus on one thing without multitasking for an entire hour every single day for the past week. We've been doing it. It doesn't sound that complicated. It doesn't sound that hard. It was.
Yeah.
There's no music, there's no talking to other people, there's no checking your phone, there's no doing anything except that one task for a whole hour. And we both did it this week, and it was quite interesting. How are you, Mike? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about the monotasking challenge because that was pretty interesting for me this week. But general arc is I'm at the very last day of my 2-week reset. 2 weeks ago, I kind of crashed out a little bit. I was trying really, really hard to get through a bunch of work stuff and be super focused and grindy and accomplish all of my dreams and whatnot. And then it just sort of blew up and I could barely function. And I wound up on a gaming bender for a while. So you had told me to just chill out, relax, take a couple weeks off, explore my environment, try and get used to the new place, try and figure out what life is supposed to be like here and all of that. And I'm sad that this is my last day. I'm going to go back to the grind tomorrow, but it also was really helpful and interesting, and I'm pretty optimistic about kind of rebooting everything tomorrow. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, you can back into it. Yeah. Well, your whole move kind of inspired me to change things up in here. So I'm actually on the complete opposite wall. I used to talk to you from over there, and now I'm over here, and I haven't finished the background yet, so it's a bit rough.
It feels like anyway, the background changes every single week for you, so it's
yeah, it changes a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to get back tomorrow. What about the meditation challenge?
Meditation challenge was good. I expressed last week how my feelings on meditation were a little bit middling, where I think it's cool, but sometimes I don't know that I necessarily get that much out of it. I do find it difficult, which is probably telling just in and of itself that it's hard for me to be willing to dedicate the time, even if it's only 10 minutes. And then even within that 10 minutes, sometimes I can start to feel restless or frustrated, or it's just difficult to meditate and actually keep my mind focused on one thing. So that's probably a strong signal of my general mental state that isn't something that's appealing. But I did it, and I found it valuable. I think it does help me reset. Just making sure that I am willing to dedicate time like that seems like a good place to be at a baseline. But I also didn't walk away from it thinking, oh man, now I have all this clarity and I'm so refreshed and I see the world in a new way or whatever. It was kind of like, all right, I did it. I'm not sad that I did it, but there's nothing terribly profound coming out of it. But I don't know how was it for you? You've been consistent. I really only did it this week. Last week I was lazy about it and didn't really do it. But you've been doing it for a solid 2 weeks. I'm wondering if you're at a different place in your thoughts on it.
I mean, we did this years ago where we did. It was kind of based off of a book, 10 minutes every day, meditation, whatever. Yeah. And I was against it at first, but then I ended up finding a lot of value out of it. This time around, I think I didn't I just kind of went off of what I remember the book talking about and kind of expected to have some of the same
Hmm.
value come back to me or the same sort of experience, but it really wasn't that way. And I think if I was to do this again, I would need a refresher. And because when I was doing it, it was if my brain was a little going a little too crazy and I wanted to calm down, I would think to myself, "Oh, it's a great time to do
Hmm.
the meditation challenge. Let's do that and sit down for 10 minutes and relax." And a lot of times I just found that sometimes it would just get worse. I couldn't stop thinking. And then I started thinking about more anxiety induced things.
Hmm.
And then I would just end up worse, you know? So I don't know. It was kind of all over the place. I really don't have any big statements on it, other than I was a little disappointed that it wasn't quite as useful as I wanted it to be. And I think maybe it wasn't as useful because I didn't make it as useful as I could have. I didn't focus on it as much as I could have.
Yeah, there's a couple things that occurred to me throughout this. Like you said, mine was a little bit also not super revelatory, but I don't know that this was necessarily my problem this time, but this seems to be a recurring theme in general where oftentimes you do something the first time and it can be really great, and you do it a second time and you're expecting it to be really great because the first time was great. And so you're going into it in a completely different way because you have expectations about it. You have some memory of an experience that you had before the last time, and that becomes the expectation here. And then if it doesn't meet that expectation in any way, it feels like a disappointment and it totally changes your relationship. And it also just poisons the whole experience because you're going into it expecting something, which is not what you were doing the first time, or at least you were thinking about it very differently the first time. And this has come up a lot, and I'm not really sure how to get around it, but it seems like a pretty serious problem.
This was something I wrote down to
Mm,
talk about this week. I, it- you know the term dead stock, where you
do
have
not.
stock for your business. It's supposed to be inventory for your
Mm,
business, and you plan on selling it. Well, the means in which to sell it, or the I don't know your goal as a business owner or whatever, things have changed. People don't buy that anymore, or whatever. It just becomes sitting stock that has no purpose anymore.
yeah.
It is dead stock. So it's it's not going to make you any money. It's not going anywhere. It's just dead stock. You have to figure out what to do with it. And I've just recently I've been looking at just I don't know all the different things I've been doing in the last maybe year and a half, 2 years for the art stuff, and some of these things worked really, really well about a year ago. Like an example, I started this specific sketchbook to where it was just sort of like a stream of consciousness drawing, where I would fill up a page every morning, then I would turn the page and I would never look back on it, or I wouldn't look back for 3 months or whatever.
Yeah.
So I do the page, turn the page, close the book, and then open up the next day on the next page, and then do another drawing, close it, and keep moving on. And it cured so many things for me. It helped me with, perfectionism and second guessing myself and
Hmm.
all that stuff. And it, it was just this ever flowing way of coming up with ideas and having fun and enjoying the process or enjoying art. And it helped me fall back in love with it. Well, I had kind of fallen off for a while, so I tried to pick it back up recently and tried to jump into all of the things that were working really well last year. And instead of, it's kind of predictable, but instead of getting excited about them and instead of them working, I just find myself beating myself up
Hmm.
for them not working the way they used to. And so the fault falls on me and it's, oh, I'm doing something wrong. And it just, I'm not, I don't know, I'm missing something. Something isn't right. This stuff worked so well last year. What's wrong with me? What's happening? And I think it's just kind of some of these routines, there's invisible things about them. Things have changed. I've changed in the last year.
Hmm.
The motives behind my art have changed, and they just invisibly shift through time. And you can't locate some of the motivations behind them. And so some of these routines just kind of become dead stock. They become they just don't fit the business anymore.
Hmm.
And I gotta figure, and so instead of forcing myself to live up to all of last year's expectations, I've been trying to incorporate new things and finding new ways of working that I know will be out of date in a year from now for me.
Hmm.
And I'm trying really hard to learn how to pivot quickly rather than fall into the trap of just beating myself up.
I feel like part of that, I don't want to use the term placebo effect because that's not quite what I mean, but often when you try something new, like the first time we tried to do a meditation challenge of we're going to meditate for 10 minutes, a lot of what made that different, I think, was that it was very novel. And if I remember right, I was pretty into the idea. You were not. You were like, yeah, meditation, whatever. But even that, even arguing about it, or you hating the idea and me being super invested, just kind of shows how much or how provocative that idea was. We were both thinking a lot about doing the challenge and what it would be like, and we're both reading this book about it and all of that. So it just created a lot of attention, and we're focused on the challenge, whether that's positive or negative. And so you go into it thinking, okay, today's day one of my 30-day meditation challenge. I wonder what it's going to be like. Am I going to love it? Am I going to hate it? This time, we're both like, okay, yeah, I guess we'll do it. We're not really thinking about it that much. We're not really talking about it that much. We show up here on the podcast and don't have that much to say about it. It's like we didn't inject any of the novelty and the attention into it. And so you're kind of left with this thing that's just feels a little bit routine, and it's not bad, but it's not great. And I wonder how much of the benefit or the things that came out of that first time had to do with us being very invested in it. And you could think of it similar to like if you went to spend half an hour at the gym every day. If somebody said you have to go to the gym for 30 minutes every day, you have no choice, and you show up and you're like, okay, I have to be here, and you just kind of walk around and do whatever, versus you being really interested in some particular goal of getting strong, getting fast. And so you show up at the gym like, I've only got 30 minutes. I got to get the most I can out of it. It's just the mentality that you're bringing to that experience is completely night and day different, and you're going to get a completely different result. I feel like that's part of what's happening here, and I think that's just a problem. One, the inflated expectations that you wind up with, where you get something good out of the first time, but also just the novelty, the attention, the interest, the energy that you bring to it the first time versus the whatever time this is, where it's like, okay, same thing, same formula, and we just kind of go through the motions. So maybe you just, I don't know
Yeah.
what the solution is, but I think you need some of that because that's part of what made it work. That energy, that interest, that novelty.
Yeah, I find sometimes I'll mention things in a you or actually I just did this recently. I'm working on a new drawing, and at some point I plan on including it in a YouTube video, right? Where I will tell the story of how I made this drawing. Well, in the process of making this drawing, I'm also, kind of documenting where I come up with the ideas. And I go to this museum and I'm looking for inspiration, right? And I record a little snippet of me at the museum where I find this sort of like this little piece of Art Nouveau jewelry, or I think it's jewelry. I actually don't even know what it is, but it looked really cool. And I was thinking, oh, this would be perfect for the drawing, or this would work as a great window in the back of the ship. This is a great idea. And I've just I've taken that because I stated it in the video. It becomes like part of the bigger official story, and so I just kind of accept it as truth
Mm-hmm.
and run with it. And I find that me making videos telling the story of the creation of the drawing actually helps me stay focused. Well, I have a bunch to say about that, but in this particular case, it was sort of like if I hadn't said it in the video, I may not have held on to it. Or if I'm not making a video, it's easy to get lost
Hmm.
and kind of wind up in indecision or whatever. What you're saying is that when you make it official, when you really focus on it, that excitement behind it, like the 30-day challenge of something,
Hmm.
or I don't know, any of the other things we've done, when we really focus on it and it's new and exciting, it, I guess we look harder for value in it. And because we do that, we find it.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that is what I'm saying. That part of the
yeah.
value is the fact that you're expecting value. You're investing a lot of energy and attention into it, trying to get the value
Yeah.
out.
And yeah, I guess what I was trying to say about the YouTube videos, I record me saying, hey, this would be a great idea.
Hmm.
And then I'm really focused on this being a great idea. And I make sure that it gets worked into the drawing and it feels really novel and
Yep.
exciting. Whereas if I wasn't doing that, it might just be like, oh, it's, another thing. I don't know. It's maybe a different uh,
I,
ramble,
that
but
might be a different thing, but it is worth talking about maybe later, maybe next podcast or something. But there
yeah.
we talk a lot about the oh you're telling a story. Is that story real? And sometimes we'll kind of push back about that of hey, that this narrative that you have for yourself and the way you're thinking and the way you're feeling in your life, is that true? Are you sure? And I think that's great, but also there's sort of the flip side of it, which is sometimes in order to change the way you operate, you kind of have to tell a story. You have to build it into your own identity to think, oh no, I am the type of person who meditates every day, or I am the type of person who does whatever. I made this piece of art and it is interesting and here's why. And telling it out loud, telling it to other people is part of what creates that story that sort of works its way into the way you think. So I don't know, maybe you're right that it's not the thing to talk about today, but I still find that kind of fascinating.
Yeah. This was my dream board from years ago,
Mhm.
if you remember that. I told everybody to make a dream board, and everyone laughed at me, especially you.
Did I laugh at you? Did
You
I
kind of laughed at
cackle
me. You
here
made
on the
fun of me. I
podcast?
don't
Did everyone laugh at you? All of our listeners left you a voicemail of laughter.
felt like it.
I feel like you're telling a story here too. But anyway, go ahead.
I stand by it. Anyway, I just tapping into that part of your brain where you tell the story of yourself that you really want, even though it seems silly or
Hmm.
ridiculous now. Like making, ambitious dreams and writing them down, and then starting to believe them, and then watching them happen. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I guarantee I did not laugh. I probably said that I would do it and then didn't do it. That's what actually happened. Probably.
Let's talk about the monotask
Yeah, I
challenge. I
found
want to
that
get into that.
yeah, I found that really interesting this week. I think I did more than, or I know that I did more than required. Like I did more than one session every day. Some days were just one, but other
Okay.
days were two or even three because it was interesting. And I found it interesting that it was sometimes very difficult and other times it was very easy, highly dependent on the thing that you're doing and the mental state that you're in. So that was just revealing to me. Uh, but just
Do you
like
remember your first one?
um did the podcast on Monday. Yeah, I think it was just work. It was work, like my job. And I
It was
was
mine too.
okay, yeah, and I was feeling really not invested and struggling and so, the it's easy
Well, paint the picture of what it would normally be, right? Like what is different about the challenge, right? Would you be listening to music? Would you be listening to a podcast or a video playing in the background? Would you be checking your phone every 5 minutes? We'll paint the picture,
yeah, often
and then be on it.
no, that's probably exactly right. There's a YouTube video going and I'm doing some work and then I'm switching to some other task. AI is a big part of the process now for better or worse, mostly worse. So a lot of times it's like ask the agent to do something and then wait for it to churn for a bit and then get distracted, do something else, or maybe I'm asking an agent to do something else and then coming back to it and then doing a review of the code and it's like the time is very sliced up and it's a lot of do this thing, focus for a bit, look at it, and then switch to something else. And the AI makes that much, much worse, or it lets you be worse at that. It's not necessarily worse, but it's very easy to. I mean, I can just talk to my phone. It'll transcribe what I say. So I can just be like looking at something like, okay, well, I want you to do this. And then I go like get distracted and do something else. That's often what it is normally. But you good?
Okay, so well, just as a side note, and we can talk about this later or whatever, but I got a second phone. This is something you suggested like 6 months ago, in order to separate all of the
Yeah.
disgusting apps onto a different phone. So I got a second phone yesterday, and I have an alarm at 9:30 to have no more electronics, right?
Oh,
So
nice.
alarms go off, but it's on both phones. That's why I had to.
Okay,
I
great.
don't know if you could hear it, but that's why I ran back there. I had my secondary phone on the top of the bookshelf. Anyway, continue.
Great,
Sorry.
great reason to run off frame. Um, yeah, so baseline, it's not always like this. Sometimes I am focused just organically, which is interesting too. But at this moment in time, I was not. I'm just constantly switching my attention from one thing to another and doing some work and then getting distracted and whatever. And I'm thinking, oh, I need to do my hour today. So let's make it now. And it was very, very painful because all that stuff gets kind of powered off. And I got my file in front of me, my project, and it's just work on that with nothing else. And I had a couple false starts. I joked about this on Discord, but I started the timer and then immediately, without any sense of irony, opened up Discord to say, hey guys, I'm starting my hour of monotasking. I'm like, what am I doing? So I had to reset the timer. It's so ingrained that you don't even realize that it's happening. So anyway, got my hour, and it's like it's I don't know what to describe it. Like it's like you were in this big open area and just kind of swerving around and driving like a maniac, and then suddenly you're on rails, and as soon as you try to turn, you've like hit the wall. I can't think of an actually appropriate metaphor here, but it feels like you're constantly just trying to turn and do something else, and you just go, oh wait, no, I can't do that. I can't reach for my phone. I can't open a tab. I can't do whatever. And it's painful at first. You feel these urges that keep washing over you, and you have to resist and just stay focused. And eventually, I mean, an hour was a nice amount of time because it gets you past that initial friction. Eventually, I just start to settle in where I mentioned this last week, but a lot of the time the loop is you do something, you have to wait for it to compile and to launch the program or whatever, and so you wind up with just a minute or two of nothing. You're just waiting. And during that minute or two, I mean, that's when the urge is very strong. It feels ridiculous that you wouldn't go do something else while you're waiting. But in this case, it's like, no, I'm going to stare at the screen or stare at the wall or whatever, but I can't switch tasks. And that is very painful. But I also noticed that one of the things I've been fighting with just in general, and this happened a lot a couple weeks ago, this is part of the crash out, I think, was that I oftentimes can make myself focus pretty hard or really have my head in stuff for a few hours, but I will often get really fatigued where I just feel I'll get into hyper focus, and then I'll get sort of like resistant and like I suddenly can't focus anymore, or I get really stuck on things that aren't that relevant. It's like my focus gets really lasered, and then it sort of breaks and fractures, and I can wind up really fatigued. But with this, with the monotasking, right, where you have these pauses, these breaks, where you can't switch, you can't focus on anything else. You just have to stop and wait and stare at a wall or think, let things process in your head. It feels way less fatiguing because my brain isn't constantly being glommed onto something. It actually has these moments of, okay, chill, process, just whatever I was thinking about for the past 10 minutes. Let's just start to get that in order and shuffle through it, or do nothing and just not exercise your brain. It's almost like a set break during a workout. And I feel like it led to a lot less fatigue, even though it feels like I'm focusing harder because I'm just stuck on one thing. I'm not taking these little entertainment breaks or whatever. But actually it feels more relaxing. And that was interesting to me.
Okay, I totally experienced that same thing, but that was on maybe day 3 or whatever. Okay, so my first day was kind of interesting in that I decided to do it at work, which is where I am the worst,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, there's so much waiting and there's so many notifications that pop up. Hey, there's food on the 3rd floor. Hey, did you turn in your timesheets? Hey, please turn in your timesheets for the last 3 weeks. Hey, and there's just so many notifications. There's so much stuff going on. It's I don't work in an open well, I kind of work in an open office, but I'm in my own office, like right off of the open office. But I share it with someone, so it's not mine,
Okay.
but I share it with somebody else, and they are almost always playing music. Normally, I have my AirPods in to drown out the music, and then I pump in my own music to blast out the other music and all the people talking outside of the office. So it's not a wonderful environment to,
Mm-hmm.
focus on your artwork. And then the artwork itself is just constantly being obliterated by it. I'll stop going down the road of talking about my job. But anyway, it's so I thought it would be interesting if I did my hour in this environment without my
Mm-hmm.
fixes, AirPods blocking out the sound and everything. And oh my God, it was hell. It was awful. So it was it was brutal to make it through an entire hour of trying to focus with music blaring behind me,
Mm-hmm.
people talking and they kept coming in the room to talk to the other person in the office, and I'm just trying to drown them out, trying to get over the fact that there's just people standing behind me. That's personal problems, I guess.
Well,
But not so much with focus, but like having people stand behind me, I absolutely hate it.
I don't think
Um,
anyone loves it.
while I'm trying to work. Yeah, yeah. So it's anyway, there was so many things
Mm-hmm.
that kept popping up, and I couldn't listen to my own music, and I was resenting all the music I heard, and then resenting all the talking out there. But it's like I couldn't even give in to being annoyed about them. I had to come back and focus. Now, of course, I failed miserably
Mm-hmm.
and not getting annoyed at them, but it's like that was the task for a whole hour, was to try and continuously pull myself back and keep working. And it sort of differs in that if I was totally alone and it was silent, I'm fighting my own brain wandering.
Mm-hmm.
This was me fighting my own brain wandering and then also all of the external factors that were pushing me away from the focus. So it was like I'm working double time to try to get anything done.
Yeah.
It was absolute hell. So I don't know what I learned from that other than it was just terrible. In that, well, I guess I just learned that in office is a horrible, horrible environment to get things done. Uh, So yeah, don't have too many observations on that other than it was way worse than I thought. But a couple days later, I tried it again at work. I tried to vary it a bit. So I did it in a few other different
Mm-hmm.
places. I did some at home. Um, I think the second day, I was rearranging my bookshelf, and I thought this sounds like a wonderful, peaceful thing to do for an hour with no distractions, no music, no phone. It felt a little weird to do that with no music because it'd be very easy to pop a record on the new record player and rearrange the books.
Sure.
But it was just as wonderful and pleasant without the music. I had no trouble focusing on, reorganizing a bookshelf for an hour. That was it was wonderful. It was stellar.
Mm-hmm.
Day 3, I decided to go back to work and try it. My office mate was out, there was no music, and it I experienced everything you experienced, which is that it was more calming than normal because if I'm painting
Mm-hmm.
the picture, it's exactly the same. I got YouTube videos up playing in the background or a podcast that I'm listening to, or I'm checking my Instagram or YouTube or whatever every 10 minutes, which is stupid, but whatever, it's true. And I'm just doing all of the horrible things just to get through the day, you know? Whatever. Nobody else listening is any better than me. And
You don't have to be defensive.
but yeah, so putting all of those things aside, and then just focusing on the work, even though it's not my favorite thing to do, just focusing on the work, I found it actually more calming. Even though I'd get frustrated at those urges of I want to check something, or I need,
Mm,
you know, I need my mental candy or something. Even though that was a little bit frustrating, it's like time moved slower,
mhm,
and it was just a little bit more calming, and it helped me. I actually found myself naturally looking for ways to keep me interested. And so I started kind of finding myself working on deeper levels of like more wholesome levels. That I mean, where you instead of just, taking the shortcuts, because it's like, oh, I got 5 minutes to work before I get distracted, right? That's what your subconscious is thinking.
mhm.
Instead of taking those constant shortcuts, when you really slow down for an hour, your brain is thinking, oh, well, we have 45 minutes left. Why don't we do things the hard way, but they will be more fulfilling and therefore more entertaining, you know, in the long run. I don't
Yeah.
really know how to describe that other than it was sort of obviously the thing I should be always doing. um, and it just, yeah, it felt really good.
Here's here's how I've started to think about it. There's this funny question that's been in my head and that was apparent very much so throughout this challenge, which is if you go to the gym and you lift weights, you can do a set of 10 on the bench press, right? And once you start getting to 7 or 8, you're getting close, you want to quit. It's exhausting. And when you finally hit that last rep, you're like, "Thank God. Now I can rest." And you chill and let your muscles recover. And after a few minutes, you have to kind of work yourself up again to like, "Okay, well, I guess I got to do another set." So it's just hard. Like you want the rest. Nobody really questions that. But for some reason, on the surface, if you look at it that way, you think, okay, I'm working, I'm thinking, I'm doing stuff for a few minutes, and then I get this little pause, this little break. Why do I not want to rest? Why am I immediately seeking out needing to pump something into my brain rather than relax and chill and like let my brain not be working on something? So to me, that seems like a conundrum. Like, why do you not feel the mental fatigue and you just want to chill and let your brain recover? And I think that that's the wrong framing of it. Because I think what's happening is that when you're in that mode of do a little bit of work, listen to the podcast, fill in all the gaps, keep my brain stimulated, what you're kind of doing is avoiding having to do anything difficult. You didn't just do a set and then you're avoiding rest. You're just not doing anything. You're wandering around the gym sort of touching things and like doing some random stuff and then wandering the next thing. You're never actually getting into a hard set. And it's an avoidance thing. And I think that now more than ever, because of AI and everything, plus all the other tech that we are awash in, everyone's just avoiding having to think hard. It's like what you're describing, somewhat seemingly counterintuitively, by forcing yourself to just have this one task in front of you and not constantly be using your brain for different things, you wind up doing harder things. You wind up not taking the shortcuts and actually sinking into thinking harder, working harder, really getting into the meat of it. And so I don't know, that's how I've been thinking about this, in that what's happening is that we are avoiding thinking. And the monotask, like the constant multitasking, is a way of never having to get deep. You're always just sort of shuffling around at the very top, switching from one little stimulating thing to another.
Isn't it amazing the lengths we will go to avoid just thinking? The pain of thinking. It sounds like a joke. It's not like it's a difficult thing.
I actually
It's an uncomfortable thing.
I can't really talk about this too much because I get sort of upset and I don't want to wind up talking about anyone in particular just for liability purposes on my part, but I have been witnessing things in the world that are kind of freaking me out, where it seems to me that some people have just flip the breaker to their brain and they're just done. They're not gonna think anymore. And it used to be that you had to think some because otherwise you couldn't really function much. But AI has made it to where as long as you're okay with mediocrity, you really don't have to. And like I said, I can't talk about it too much, but it's
Well, we can't
freaks me
even.
out.
Well, yeah, it freaks me out too. But we can't even talk from our high horse because we're suffering through a 1 hour challenge on one.
That's
Like
completely
what the
true.
hell? We're no better. And yeah,
Well, I think okay, you're right. You're
I
right.
know
You're
what
right.
you're saying.
There's
Yeah.
tons of irony for me even bringing this up, but there are just certain things that I have witnessed where I'm just thinking, "Oh my God, this is terrifying. This could be me. This could be everyone. This is shocking
Yes.
in its in someone's inability to even engage in like the simplest sets of facts and logic and everything." So I totally agree, but I don't know. It's just
No, yeah, I hear you.
okay.
I feel that fear as well. How do we make it better? How do we improve at this? I mean, we have another challenge lined up
Mhm.
at the end of this one, but it seems silly to do challenges in order to get to it. I guess
I don't
I
think it's
want to talk
silly.
about. Okay, I don't actually think it's silly either, but I I wish it came more naturally, but maybe this is just what we do. I don't know. The uncomfortableness of thinking.
Yep.
Like, but it is more fulfilling when you actually do it. When you actually focus for a long period of time on something, it's more fulfilling. So, why do we avoid it so much?
I was I don't, I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not sure. I'm going to be a politician and just skip to something I already was thinking about and want to say. Um, but my probable answer here is that it's probably human nature in the same way that we are programmed to try and not starve. So when food is abundant, we tend to struggle. It's hard to force yourself to eat less. It's exactly the opposite of what our wiring is. And I think mentally it's the same thing. Like we don't thinking hard is hard. We try and avoid it. We're trying to conserve energy. And so it's just pretty deeply rooted in that our natural state, when given an abundance of things available to do it for us, we're just naturally gonna do that. So that's my thought here. I watched this long video essay mini biography on Rodney Mullen recently, the skateboarder. You know
I
Rodney
don't know.
Mullen. Yes, you do. Unless
No,
I have the name wrong,
I
which would
don't.
be crazy. Yes, you do.
I have no idea. I don't. I
You
don't.
told me
I don't
about
keep
him.
up with skateboarding. I don't think so.
Let me just double check that yeah, no, you know who he is. You would see it. You used to when you were a skater when you were like 10. You loved Rodney
I
Mullen.
know, Bob Burnquist, right? And Tony Hawk. I don't recognize Rodney Mullen, but maybe I would.
Okay,
If he was in Tony Hawk Pro Skater,
I'm
whatever,
so
then yeah.
annoyed because I know for sure that you do. It's whatever. It doesn't. You're.
Yeah, yeah, Rodney Mullen. I remember him.
Thank you.
You-
He was a freestyle skater. He was considered one of the godfathers of skating, maybe the godfather of skating. He he's a kid, 8 or something. He sees a friend with a skateboard and is just like, Dad, I have to have one of those. I have to have a skateboard. That's so cool. I love it. And his dad was like, he's kind of a military guy. I was like, no, you can't, or whatever. Eventually, kind of consented and said, okay, fine, you can have a skateboard, but you're not allowed to go anywhere with it or something. So it ends up Rodney Mullen gets a skateboard. All he has is the concrete slab in his garage or shed or something. He's no streets, no nothing, no half pipe, none of that. He's just got a skateboard as a little kid in his garage, not in the city. And that's all he can do. He has no access to videos of other skaters. He's not reading tutorials. He's not doing anything. So all he can do is just hang out in his little garage with his skateboard. And he invented the kickflip. They didn't even call it the kickflip at the time. They called it the magic flip because nobody could understand how he was doing it. It just seemed like magic. I mean, even to Tony Hawk, like he invented everything. He invented the ollie. I mean, he invented skateboarding for all practical purposes. And he did it by himself in his garage in this probably depressing little shed on a flat piece of concrete with nothing because there was nothing else available. I mean, he didn't have the internet. This was way too early for that. He had no access to outside information. And he actually does TED Talks and talks about creativity and the way he thinks and all this stuff now. But that was just it. There was no temptation to cheat or emulate anyone else because it wasn't available. And it just struck me that that's probably the way to do it is to, if you really want to get deep on something, then you just have to be in an environment where you have no choice, where he's not tempted to do other things because they're not even available to him. That's all. So I'm not exactly sure how to apply that because the world is different, you know?
Well,
But
no,
that seems like the ideal environment.
I find removing other things is one of the best ways to make sure that I focus on what I want to be focusing on. And that's why I got the second phone is so I can get rid
Mm-hmm.
of all this stuff. I can hide my phone. I can the second phone I'll only use for posting on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. There is no Instagram, YouTube. There is no refreshable things on my new phone. I don't even have
Yeah.
email on there. And like I just bought a brand new phone and I don't even care. I've had it for 24 hours and I look at like I've hardly looked at it
Mm-hmm.
because I just don't care. There's nothing to be addicted to. It's amazing. And so removing it keeps me from checking it
Yeah.
constantly. And like I did this when I spent like 3 years teaching myself art. I just got rid of the TV. Like I stopped watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
I gave up StarCraft. I loved playing StarCraft. That was really fun. I stopped playing computer games, stopped watching TV, just removed all the
Yeah.
temptation. It's like, oh, the only thing you have to satisfy your boredom is the stuff that you actually want to do. So you just keep coming back to it. And that's what
I
I
guess.
continue to try to do now, but it's so much harder now.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
to rewind a little bit to the challenge, one of the things I did find interesting was, like I said, it was the difficulty was very different for different things, and I I spent I've ridden my one wheel for over 100 miles in the past week. I just have been like, okay, I'm just gonna ride it, and as soon as it's charged again, I'll just go ride it again. But one of my hour monotasking sessions was I'm gonna just ride the one wheel for an hour, and that was incredibly it was trivially easy because I'm not tempted to grab my phone and scroll the internet because I physically can't, or at least it would be very clunky and difficult and I would probably die. I'm just I'm just cruising around. And so I would get done with an hour and I wish I had more battery to do another hour. I mean, it's just there's no something about the activity and it's stimulating. I'm moving around the city and seeing lots of things and there's people around and all that stuff. So, it's like it's different than sitting in a chair and staring at a wall, which I think is also interesting just in and of itself. But something about the activity itself, it's like it's much easier
Well,
to do that and not be tempted to get distracted when you just don't really have the ability to get distracted.
well, also forget about the whole being distracted thing, right? I mean, that's what we've been talking about the whole time, but forget about that. Just riding the one wheel, or say riding your bike,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
doing something like that, you don't typically assign that kind of activity to an hour, right? Maybe, okay, I'm gonna ride it for 20 minutes on my way to the
Hmm.
coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
And I'll stop. But anything past that, where you'd be riding for an hour, you just wouldn't do it in your day because it just doesn't fall into the category of things that take
Hmm.
an hour or whatever. So putting it in, adding that time frame onto it, it changes the experience a little bit in that you can go deeper into enjoying the ride,
Hmm.
you know? Uh, one of the days I spent just looking at this art book. Now, reading for an hour or whatever, that's not crazy. But looking at an art book for an hour, that's not something I would typically do
Hmm.
for an hour. It would be, 25 minutes or whatever, and then call it done. But to sit there looking at pictures for an entire hour, it was really, really wonderful. And it's like it's a different experience. It's an elevated experience of that same thing. It wasn't hard for me to stay
Hmm.
interested in it. I wasn't, maybe a couple times you're like, oh, I need to check my phone. Oh, never mind, whatever. Who cares? I'm not even really getting distracted. It's just that that experience has now like reached another level of wonderfulness. And it's very similar to the music challenge that we just did, in that all of us are listening to music still. Like, who the hell doesn't listen to music?
Yeah.
But it's always in tiny little chunks nowadays. It's, lo-fi girl or like whatever. It's just some random stuff in the background,
Yeah.
and it's just easily consumable short music usually. But when we have a challenge where you're supposed to listen to an entire album and not do anything else, you feel it deeper. You feel more you consume it. I don't know. You just take it to another
Yeah,
level.
I
And
completely agree.
yeah.
One thing that has occurred to me is you contrast watching some kind of Rodney Mullen documentary or whatever on YouTube for an hour versus scrolling TikTok for an hour. And obviously, no one struggles to scroll TikTok for an hour, but choosing something, just saying, I'm going to do this for an hour and then doing it for an hour feels very different. And sometimes I think
Mhm.
what makes you hesitant is if you watch something for an hour that's really interesting and really rewarding, that might you might think, okay, yeah, cool. I'm cool with spending my hour on that. But if you get partway through and it's not, or you think this isn't what I expected, or I really don't like the way they presented this, or I disagree, then that's like, ugh, I really want to switch. And obviously, you shouldn't just spend your time doing stuff that isn't worthwhile just for the sake of it. But consuming something that you don't like can be pretty valuable too, because if nothing else, you're forcing yourself to just think about this thing and observe this thing for an hour. And if you hate it, you can at least formulate strong feelings on why you hate it. Or you're watching some documentary that's preaching to you about the value of whatever, and you think, no, I disagree. I don't think we should have nuclear fusion in this part of the world, whatever. And you've at least like formed a strong opinion on that and had to reason about it and think about it. Versus the TikTok for an hour, you don't even know what you watched. It's like you just deleted an hour from your brain. Or you might have little, oh yeah, I remember that funny TikTok, but like there's nothing forms up. There's no deep anything that happens. Again, I think it has to do with that avoidance of the hard set rather than doing lots of little hard sets. It's like you're never having to wrestle and think and develop those opinions. And so I don't know, I just increasingly see this value in staying focused on one thing. Like an hour is a pretty nice chunk of time for that. Like you said, an art book, or I one of my monotasking hours was gaming. I played Deadlock for an hour without switching context, which sounds insane, but and maybe it is insane. But oftentimes, what I will do is I will queue up for a game and then alt tab and browse the internet or do whatever, watch a little bit of YouTube. I will have something going in the background as I'm, in the lobby and playing and whatever, and I'm still filling all the gaps, even though I'm gaming. And turning that off and saying, okay, I'm going to play this game and nothing else. I'm not gonna, when I have to wait for a new match, when I have to, I'm sitting in a lobby or waiting for the death cooldown to finish, I'm not switching. I'm just sitting here. And what was interesting was that I played for a while and then thought, I really don't want to play anymore. I'm actually not having very much fun. And I think I'm not really enjoying the game right now. I'm just craving that shallow-minded stimulation. So I got done with my hour. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go read a book. And actually read a book this week, which is kind of interesting. Haven't read a book in a long time. So I don't know. It was revealing.
So what's our challenge for next week?
Here's my pitch. I was thinking this is very similar, honestly, but not quite. I would like to do an hour of something with no internet. So it doesn't, if you were playing
No
frisbee,
screen, right?
well, in my case, I want to work, so that not no screen. Um, I want to be able to work without the assistance of an AI, without Google search, without anything online. Like I'm going to turn off my Wi-Fi radio and then just work for an hour. That's kind of what I'm imagining myself doing because of the context switching and all of that I still want to fight with. So it's similar to the monotasking challenge, but I do think it's different in that it is sort of more constrained in that you aren't using the internet at all, and that cuts out a lot of different activities and opportunities for multitasking and time slicing. So that's my idea.
Okay. But this could also include, reading for an hour. It could include anything
Absolutely.
for an
Yes.
hour, just no internet.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Uh, yeah. Okay. So monotask, 1 hour every day this week, no internet.
Or just do one thing for an hour with no internet every day this week. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Is that it?
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up?
Yeah. Okay. So to kind of recap, takeaways from this meandering discussion. Um, well,
Bring us home.
right. Always super easy to do. You made an observation that I'm now struggling to remember that I really liked. Can you help me out?
That doesn't really help me.
Okay. Some of the simple takeaways that I can remember. There's a certain depth that we all seem to avoid, and we believe that is why multitasking and constantly switching is so appealing, even though it just on paper doesn't seem like it should be. It seems like you should crave rest, but actually it seems like the opposite is happening, where you are avoiding having to ever think hard or encounter something that is uncomfortable by constantly switching your attention around. So there seems to be, to me, tremendous value in letting yourself just sit on one thing and slowly sinking down into the harder, deeper levels. Is that a pretty fair summary there?
Yeah.
It also seems like this is getting worse, or the environment is shifting to where it is becoming progressively harder to do this, or it takes more and more intention. And so it is likely more important than ever to really double down on trying to do this. Even though you claim to not know who he is, I really liked my example of Rodney Mullen becoming the godfather of skating by being a little kid in his garage with a skateboard and no one else to talk to. So
maybe it'll come to me later.
So I'm so irritated that you don't know who he is.
I maybe I do. I don't know. It's been a while since I've thought about skateboarding.
Fine. Well, it's time to think about it again.
Was the observation I made the Deadstock thing?
Yeah,
that was an observation I liked. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot where we started there. So there is a certain value in novelty and the first time you've attempted something and creating, routines that might be very relevant to your life at the time. But as you said, it can wind up being dead stock where it's no longer valuable to you, no longer novel, and it's important to recognize that and let it go, I guess is the takeaway there. So,
yep.
Okay, great. For anyone who did the challenge, let us know how it went. I would love to hear if you all have any insights and takeaways. The challenge for this week is to do something without the internet for an hour, so very similar, but let us know how that feels. I imagine it will be also painful. You can leave us comments on YouTube, on the podcast platforms, and you're also very welcome to join our Discord. We talk about some of this stuff there as well. So, great. We will see you next week. Good luck.